Good morning, happy Friday, and welcome to Rising. We have a great show for you today. I am so excited to be joined by an old friend of mine, Kevin Walling.
It's great to see you, Amber. It's been a little while. It's awesome to be on the new set with you.
Yes, very glad to have you here.
Thanks for having me. Well, Democratic presidential nominee Kamala Harris attended a flashy star-studded campaign event in Michigan Thursday night, hosted by Oprah Winfrey, called Unite for America. Just a month and a half ahead of the presidential election, live audience members had the chance to ask Harris questions that are on their minds as they prepare to cast their vote for the presidency in November. Winfrey hosted the event with activist group Win with Black Women, which is aimed to register people to vote in key states like Georgia, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. The event brought together over 100 groups online that have rallied behind the vice president over the last few months, such as White Dudes for Harris, Cat Ladies for Kamala, Latinos for Harris, and many more. A slew of celebrities also joined virtually, including Meryl Streep, Jennifer Lopez, and Chris Rock.
While the conversation between Oprah and Kamala Harris left many in the audience in tears, literally, many online felt like Harris did not offer any concrete policy proposals and instead dodged questions and gave some rambling responses. Here's what she had to say when asked about her, quote, specific steps that she would take to, quote, strengthen the nation's southern border.
The United States Congress, members of the Congress, including some of the most conservative Republicans, came up with a border security bill. And here's what that border security bill would have done. It would have put 1,500 more border agents at the border.
Oprah, a registered independent who endorsed Harris at the Democratic National Convention last month, interrupted and seemed to call out Harris for her response.
What does leadership really look like? And is it about you or is it about the people?
Right.
Is it about running on problems or fixing problems? My work and my career has always been about saying, let's fix problems. Let's address the needs, because we know it's within our capacity to do that.
So to answer Justin's question, now that that bill has gone and hasn't passed, will you reintroduce that?
Absolutely.
Harris also got some flack online for what she had to say about her ownership of a gun.
I'm in favor of the Second Amendment, and I'm in favor of assault weapons bans, universal background checks, red flag laws. And these are just common sense. These are just common sense.
I thought it was so powerful at the convention when you said you have guns. No, at the debate.
I'm a gun owner. Tim Walz is a gun.
I did not know that.
If somebody breaks in my house, they're getting shot.
Yes. I hear that. I hear that.
Probably should not have said that.
But
my staff will deal with that later.
Yeah.
But of course, she couldn't let the night end without throwing some zingers Trump's way.
Part of my plan is to give startup small businesses a $50,000 tax deduction to start up their small business. Right now it's $5,000. Nobody can start a small business with $5,000. So that's part of my plan.
That's a teeny-tiny business.
That's a business in
teeny-tiny business.
It's a concept of a business, right?
Yeah.
So Amber, what did you think of that interview last night with Oprah?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I feel pretty in line with what some of the internet commenters, as we called them, said, which is...
They've been busy.
Yes,
Certainly
they sure are. Yeah, I mean, it was pretty light on specific policy proposals, which unfortunately I think has been sort of the standard bearer for the Kamala campaign. And even on the debate stage just a few weeks ago, I think that would have been her first real opportunity to provide some of those specifics. And I don't know that voters left that debate feeling any more like they really know what Kamala is going to do if she becomes president. It's a lot about tone and character, which is fine, but when you're running a presidential campaign, you should also probably tell them what kind of policies you're going to implement.
And that's certainly been one of the biggest knocks, I think, against the Harris campaign is the lack of, and we're going to talk about this later in the show, the lack of direct media interviews, although she participated in some panels this past week. But that certainly has been an attack line for Republicans and conservative media, that she isn't making herself available to the scrutiny of the media. I thought one of the biggest takeaways was that line about guns. They got the audience engaging and cracking up, and that has seemingly been one of the biggest takeaways coming out of that interview.
It's interesting. I wonder if that's something that could potentially rankle the progressive base a little bit, because
She was certainly a little bit more tough on crime last night.
I know.
In that conversation.
I mean, she said before, back in when she was running for the Democratic primary in 2019, that she wanted to ban assault weapons. I think she still supports that position.
And she doubled down on that in the
Right,
interview.
and has, but I think in the past she's been a little bit tougher on guns. I know she said before that she owns one. I think she said it in the debate, actually. I did reach out to her campaign and ask what kind of gun she owns.
That's a great
and
question,
if she has
actually.
more than
Yeah.
one. I have not heard back.
Okay. Well, you heard it here. If you're watching on Air Force 2 right now, before you head to Atlanta, please give us a call and let us know what kind of firearm that is. But I think this is also part of this kind of larger strategy in terms of, there is a hunger for more information about the vice president. Amber, to your point, where, she's still an unknown quality to a lot of Americans. Coming out of the debate, they saw record numbers. I think 68 million or so folks tuned into that debate. And I think this is still part of this almost reintroduction effort by the Harris campaign with a friendly endorser, right, in Oprah, who is the best when it comes to these kind of short form interviews in front of an audience. But certainly that hunger persists, I think, among the American people, looking for more specifics from the vice president's team.
Yeah, and the numbers back up the idea that they want to know more. I mean, ahead of the first debate, I believe it was 40% said that they needed to know more about who Kamala Harris was and what she intended to do as president. And then following the debate, we just had a Gallup poll come out this week with the approval ratings, where Trump's approval rating has actually gone up and Kamala Harris's has gone down. So I have to wonder if this is not an intended calculation, because they feel like they're concerned that if they introduce her too much, that people might not like what they see. They might revert back to this 2019 opinion of Kamala that got her knocked out of the Democratic primary very quickly. There were some, from reporting, there was apparently Democratic National Committee focus groups ahead of her taking over the top of the ticket, where voters were specifically talking about her laugh as being something they didn't like. That's being rebranded, of course, by the campaign as joy.
Yep.
And Kamala,
Certainly.
I think, said in this interview that she was trying to take this weakness and turn it into a strength. But again, if you have your approval ratings falling, the more that you're putting yourself out in front of the American people, that doesn't suggest that that strategy is working. Maybe it is time to try something else, like giving specifics.
Yeah, I mean, although the latest favorability ratings have pinned her at 50%, just above the high water mark, and Trump at 37%. I mean, Trump is such a known quantity out there. I think, interestingly enough, too, I would say almost J.D. Vance is probably a little bit too overexposed in doing too many interviews, where then, he says something and has said something during the Senate race, where then they have to go back and qualify it, counter it, address it. But certainly, the vice presidential candidate on the Republican side has been doing these kind of daily press scrums and stuff like that. And we've seen his favorability rating tick down, to your point. So maybe the less, you're on camera, the better. It's just figuring out a happy medium and addressing that high percentage that's still coming out of the debate, as you rightly point, Amber, that want more details, want more information from the vice president with 46 days to go.
Right. I mean, I think separate from a political strategy standpoint, the American people do deserve to know the
Certainly.
specifics of your policy platform. And I think the big sticking point for me is we still have not really heard what the big political conversion was. We've heard sort of piecemeal that her values haven't changed. She's always supported security at the border, harkening back to her time as a prosecutor. On the economy, it's, well, I was a middle-class kid. Okay, but how did you get from thinking that ICE needed to be rethought and wanting to decriminalize illegal immigration, actually co-sponsoring a bill in the Senate for an electric vehicle mandate, wanting to ban fracking, to now flipping on all of those really major policy positions that are really key in the swing states? People want to know, is this a political calculation, as Bernie Sanders suggested, or
that was a pretty raw
right?
moment from Bernie Sanders.
I know, that was brutal for her.
It was pretty,
Yeah.
I don't think the Harris campaign was necessarily happy with
I'm
that.
sure they weren't. Or was it
that
real?
statement.
I
Yeah.
mean, did she have some kind of transformation? You don't typically go through major transformations when you're 50 years old, but I mean, I'm willing to give her the benefit of the doubt if she can explain it in a coherent way.
Well, with 46 days to go, hopefully we'll get more answers on that front. But I think we've got some more Rising coming up after this.